There is no textbook for grief because each of us is writing our own. In this episode, I'm joined by the incredible Vicky Andritsch, and she is a mother, a woman walking through a profound loss in her life, someone whose strength continues to move me so deeply. And together in this conversation, we explore what it means to grieve while still living fully and finding the bliss and the joy. And we talk about the sneak attack that grief gives us, the tenderness of loss, and also the inner peace that can emerge when we finally stop trying to hold everything together. Vicky really shares what it's been like to lose this great love of her life and how through that pain she has found moments of quiet beauty, self-compassion, and surrender. This isn't just a conversation about grief. It's a conversation about becoming, about coming home to yourself and peeling back the layers and finding grace in the hardest of seasons that we experience. If you have ever experienced a loss that changed you, or you're simply learning how to hold joy and heartbreak in the same breath, this episode will land where it needs to. So let's go beyond the surface. Let's dive in. When you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Our first conversation that we had on the podcast last year, it was so beautiful to talk about like your journey, and that episode and that conversation was also so beautiful, and just the way that you navigated so many different challenges with all of your children and just all of that. And we're here in another period of your life, and it's one of those things where life is always throwing things at us. And here we are having another conversation that's probably going to be focused a lot on grief and a lot about coming back home to yourself and that journey. And I'm just like deeply honored to be in conversation with you. We were already talking a little bit, and I'm just like, this is going to be such a beautiful conversation. So first, thank you.
Well, thank you. It is so good to see your face. So nice to see you. And as we were mentioning, it's hard to know the flow of what this will look like, other than I just feel so drawn to you and just what you're able to pull out of all of us. And just, the conversations are always rich and meaningful to me. So I'm just so... Hold that thought. There we go. There you are. I am just so grateful to have time to hold this space with you. So thank you for having me.
I think it's, when I say too, for me, like divinely timing, and just like the way, when we're recording this, it's very close for me. Just like dealing with grief has been, a journey of my life. I experienced it at such a young age, but we're coming on the 10-year anniversary for my grandmother. And so it's like such a like tender time. And what's interesting is I remember like not too long ago when I was sitting with this and reflecting and just sitting with, oh my gosh, it's been 10 years. And it truly feels like this just happened like a couple years ago. And I was like, where did the time even go? And it's just one of those things that's interesting, right? Because it's just like, and I feel like you can speak to this more. I think what's interesting is that no matter how much time goes on, it's like all these waves come at different times. And one thing we were talking about too is just like, for me, it's interesting because I feel like it didn't happen 10 years ago. It feels like it was just a couple of years, because too, I feel like she's walking alongside me, especially over this last decade, and it's like just feeling that deep connection with the work that I do now and who I am. And there still continues to be this connection. And at the same time, as I am in this journey and phase of my life, where, as like just recently getting married, and now we're, having the conversation of expanding our family, it's like, then there's like the grief of, I wish she was here to like experiencing it, And so grief
Right.
just has such a, way of sneaking up on us, I guess you were talking about too.
Yes, I call it the sneak attack. It's interesting to me because it's the one thing that none of us can sidestep experiencing in this life, right? And, for me, it just got real personal 9 months ago. I was given this beautiful gift of a love. I often say it wasn't long enough, but what I had was truly the most magnificent of loves I've ever experienced. And then all of a sudden, I am faced with having to understand grief and walk through grief. And as we've discussed before, even in the previous podcast, I've climbed some mountains over the last few decades. I've had some hurdles for sure. And I look back on each one of those, and I think each one I was able to pick up skills and understanding and found depth in places I didn't know even existed, And as we were talking earlier, in this one hand, I'm holding a cancer diagnosis for my son, brain hemorrhage at birth for my daughter, rolled into seizures, a brain injury for another kiddo, which led us down a slippery slope of mental illness, divorce, all of other life hiccups that come at you just with the raising 5 kids, right? So all of this is in one hand. And then 9 months ago, over in this hand, I experienced losing a true love. Everything I held in this hand does not match the heaviness of what is in the hand that I hold the grief in. And I think of it, and it's been so interesting to me because for the first time also through this walk over the last 9 months, for the first time, I've been able to take care of me.
Yeah.
All these other, heartbreaking family circumstances. I was taking care of my kids, a cancer diagnosis, for my little guy at 3. Taking care of him. I'm also taking care of the 4 kids, making sure they're okay. They were always at the front of my list as they should be, right? With all of it. And for the first time, I've had this experience of, okay, what do I need to do for my heart with this? And, I went into it, and we've in our family, sadly, have also experienced other layers of grief. So this wasn't my first rodeo, yet it was the first that carried such a big piece of my heart because of I'd finally found my guy.
Yeah.
Right. So while I've had these other experiences of grief, of losing loved ones in our family and friends and whatnot, this one struck a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the relationship. But, I thought I want to make sure I can nurture the relationships with my kids through this and take care of how I need to do this, how I need to grieve.
Yeah.
And, it looks different for everyone, right?
Of course.
That's the one thing we learn about grief is there is no textbook. There is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
And it comes at you from all different directions when you least expect it. And, I can say the word blessed. I have been so blessed to be able to truly go inward with how I've been able to walk through this to find that peace.
Yeah.
And, I'm saying in the times that have been the most tumultuous in my life, these last 9 months, grief that has been so, so huge, it's scared me. At the same time, I have found such an inner peace and calm, and I think that's because I've truly been given this blessing of being able to take the time to heal. I've been fortunate with my job that it has allowed me to process as I've needed to process and allow that time. Because to be honest, I think how do we do this in a world that's coming at us as it is, and what we have to do and how we have to show up? And again, it looks different for everybody, right? There is the one thing, Ashley, and I want to stress is there's no right or wrong way other than looking inward of, okay, how can I best walk this?
Yeah.
And I often think back, I had a very dear friend mentor. At one point, she was my mindfulness coach. And I don't remember a lot from those beginning days, but I do remember something she said, and it just stuck out. I still think of it all the time. And she said, do the work now so you can come back to us whole.
Mm.
And that was so powerful to me, because I knew what I was feeling at that moment. And I wouldn't say broken. I would kind of explain it as shattered.
Yeah.
I truly felt what a broken and shattered heart felt like. But that, it would be very easy to go like this because it is so big and scary. And I thought after she said that, I don't want to still be carrying this feeling in 10 years of how big it was. So I knew I needed to get my arms around it, so for me personally, it's been leaning into those hard emotions. And as I said earlier, I call them sneak attacks when I think I'm doing okay, and you can prepare for birthdays, and you can prepare for holidays, and you can prepare for anniversaries. Yet it's moments like the scent of sunscreen, because we did so many tropical vacations together. It's the song, the random song that you hear when you're, in a boutique somewhere that you never hear anyplace else. It's those sneak attacks that, again, I'm learning to just lean in and hold on to them, because at the same time, so represents how precious life is and just what a tender love can feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, what I think of too is when you were talking about, just like on one hand, you have all of these other pieces and nothing compares to the other. What I was thinking of is, do you feel like it was like easy to almost avoid you and like what you were feeling at that time? Because it was like, I'm mom mode, I take care of the kids. They're
1,000%.
And in a way, we kind of like, that's a way that we're hiding behind and not allowing ourselves to kind of like lean into the big, scary emotions, the thing that's so uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's where I feel like sometimes then it sneaks up on us too. It's like years later, and it's like you're feeling all the things because you didn't give yourself that space to tend to yourself, to honor like yourself.
To have yourself on your to-do list.
Yeah.
Right. And it did. I had probably a decade and some change of brain hemorrhage at birth, cancer, seizures, epilepsy. It was one after the other.
Yeah.
And then it started coming out of that. And, sadly, saw a marriage that was failing, lots of crisis along the way, decades worth. And I remember very clearly, I've got to start taking care of myself, because I hadn't for so long. And again, as parents, we step into the line of fire, and that's, and if given the opportunity, I'd do it all over again, because, it was my children, right? Yet I'm more mindful on how to take care of myself now, as well as when in crisis. And I think that, I look at all of those other things, and I look at all of my 5 kids now and my bonus son-in-law, and, I truly marvel at who they are and they have become, because they have walked through things that you just cannot learn in a textbook. So now as mom, I'm sitting back and I think, we made it, because I see what they're out doing and who they are to one another and in the world. And, my biggest and most special accomplishments, right, are those kids, and just watching how they navigate life. And now I think, gosh, how as mom can I continue to be a guidance for them? Be that compass. And it's being able to show them we do the hard things, but we also take care of ourselves while we're doing them, which maybe I didn't do a long time ago, because I didn't know how, and they're all adults now. And, yet still as mom, I want to take care of them. But even more so, I see them turn around wanting to take care of me, And I remember several of them, when I assured them, I can do this, I know how to do hard things. And, several of them just said, yeah, but we just wish you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because I think, man, as a family, as a whole, we've carried some things. But, all of that said, I've always felt it was so important. If it's a story to you, regardless of what it is, it doesn't need to be cancer. It doesn't need to be grief or death. If it resonates here, then it's yours to own and decide, okay, how can I walk this? How am I going to carry it?
Yeah.
I always think, how can I teach? How can I teach my kids?
Yeah.
I didn't share this with you earlier, but it's really special. And this just happened over the weekend, coming up on our anniversary, and it'll resonate with you. But I'll fast forward through a lot, but I was looking through boxes that I had packed up of mics, and I was looking for AirPods because I had lost mine. And I remember I had packed his up, and I thought, okay, I was waiting, finding the strength to go through boxes again with fresh eyes. And so I was going through looking for his AirPods. I found them in the first box right away. And they were sitting on this book that he had purchased that he never told me. He had never told me he purchased it. So I opened it, and he had a couple anniversary cards in here for me, a picture of us that he printed, but he had dog-eared a page that he had read. And I found this right before our anniversary. But there were a lot of snippets in it, but one of it is, the lessons I have learned shaped me into the woman I am today. It has been so much more than getting to the other side of my pain. It has been about who I became in the process, who I could serve while I was at it. It was seeking out joy, something that I felt so cellular and deep beyond the surface. It was about sharing with others. And then he had, right under the dog ear, doing anything but does not have me living to my truest version, or equally as important to me, guiding my children to find theirs. This gift of a life is not about me. It is about serving the world in such a bigger way, bigger than sometimes I can conceptualize. And I thought, not only did he buy this, he dog-eared the page that he needed me to hear,
The perfect
words that I
time.
wrote years ago. And I thought, okay, loud and clear, it's doing the hard things and finding the blessings.
And that,
while in the
it's not
storm.
always easy, right? Like, to find those blessings in something as tragic and heart shattering as losing the love of our lives, like losing someone that we love so deeply. It's not
Right.
always easy to find that blessing, but when you can and you hold on to that, it's like, I think what's coming through and like what I think about, especially as for me, I'm like always find this way of just, I think, clinging on to, for example, my grandmother. It's like that is the way that I continue to honor her legacy. And
Yes.
that's where also it's the gift within that. That's the blessing of itself too, right? To have,
Yes.
and for some reason recently, when I was thinking about like this time frame of like my grandmother and how long she's been gone, and also just thinking about like, motherhood, and just thinking like, my grandmother is not going to know them. And it's like, I just wish, you know what I mean?
Right.
But what's interesting is I was kind of like calculating too, even like of how long I knew her. And it's just so interesting to see how in short amount of time we can experience some of the most profound things in our lives. And, sometimes I think we get caught up in like, timelines and just things like that. And
Yes.
it's like, like grief and loss. It's like, I also think about my cousin, and he passed when he was very young, and he was 20. And it's like such a short life. And we were talking about this a couple weeks ago with me and my cousin. We were talking about this, and it's like we were reflecting on his funeral and just how there was so many people at his funeral. Like, we're talking hundreds. And it's like 20 years. It's such a
Made a big impact.
Right? It's such a short amount of time on this earth.
Yes.
And yet made such a big impact. And yet now for him, we're moving on 20 years that we've lost him next year. And it's like, we're still talking about him. It's like a gift.
And don't you think, and that's it. And again, I know we kind of fell into the conversation of grief, and right alongside of that, I think the things I have learned just in these last 9 months, of having to walk through this. And often I'll say it's like walking through wet cement is how some days it has felt. There are all sorts of different analogies you can look at. And I thought of that today because in the beginning, I lived near the water and I would go down and I'd sit on my pier for hours in the beginning, for hours. And I was proud because I got out of bed and that was my goal, to put my feet on the floor. And more often than not, I would end up in the fetal position on my pier for hours. And today I walked and they just put our piers back in and I walked out onto the pier and I could just feel again this passing of time, because the last time I was in that position, I was fetal position. So it tells me, okay, I'm taking those steps forward despite the sneak attacks and despite the slippery slope that this often is. I could see myself taking those steps forward, but, I'm learning and have learned and drawn from so many people that have walked before me in this, that it doesn't go away. The pain doesn't go away, but you learn how to build your life around it, to carry it. And I have this beautiful image, and maybe you've seen it, of, a lot of people think you have this big grief boulder and it gets smaller, it gets smaller, it gets smaller. And no, the grief boulder stays the same, but your life gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you build around it. And that's I'm a visual person. And that when I saw that one day, it gave me hope of, okay, I will become whole again. I don't want to forget the love. I don't want to forget how magnificent it was, right? And then at the same time, you think, okay, but how? How can I walk with this? And that's where I think, personally for me, I have taken such intentional time over these last 9 months to quiet down, and in that stillness, that's where I've found the beauty. That's where I've found the peace, is in that inner reflection. And, we live in a world where there's a lot of noise coming, right? And just, we grow up in that, at least I did, show up big, show up fast.
Yeah.
Mentality.
Life keeps moving too, right? Like that's what you were just saying that earlier, is everyone's life keeps moving.
Keeps moving.
Even when we're going through something.
I loved that pace that I kept for a very long time. It ignited me, it lit me up. It was, that was where I found my cadence. And then the world stopped. Yeah. And with that, I took a step back, and that's where I've seen just the real beauty for, and I preface that because it's learning how to walk with both.
Yeah.
This devastating grief, yet holding this magnificent bliss that I have found in the stillness, and learning how to find that inner peace and listening.
Yeah.
It's been beautiful, and to be honest, I think a lot of the work that I do now, as I learn to carry this, is learning how to do both, right? I have to tell you, in the beginning, I wanted to grow wings and fly away. I mean, I just, it was so heavy. And the layers of grief are just, it's a very real, real chapters you walk to get through this, and you think you're through and then you're back at square one again. But just learning how to walk with both and creating that inner peace and stillness where I can, feel what I need to feel and peel back the layers and understand more and shine with that energy that he gave to me.
Yeah.
So while it's been quiet, I've been learning some wonderful lessons.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. Forgive me, I digress, but learning how to walk here amongst all the noise. And I'll be totally transparent. I'm still learning how to re-enter. I am not back. And yet the things that once lit me up, it looks different now.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced this beautiful just joy, so it looks different. So I'm learning how to walk, yet also stay connected and find that inner peace, comfort, joy.
I love just the way that the way you talk about it is like so true to just your essence for, I feel like I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years, and I'm just like in awe of it. And I think, and I guess the curiosity that comes is, and you've talked a lot about like the inner peace. It's not even like a properly formulated question, but just how did you come to the inner peace? Maybe like what are the lessons that have come through in this space that you've created for yourself? Like how have you been able to cultivate this like inner peace in this stillness?
It's definitely has been pulling back and quieting down for myself, meaning social media, all the noises that come. It's a lot, we're taking things in constantly, right? And I've set some pretty strong boundaries of what I allow in, both energetically, both, through the social media, through the news, you name it. But yet I've always walked that line very carefully because I feel when things are coming. I read something not long ago, and I didn't coin it, but it so resonated with me. And it's, we don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. And that to me was a bullseye, thinking of just, we don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are, so how can I make sure, I embody that peace and, serenity and joy, even during a time like this. So yes, I have powered down. I have quieted down. I'm sure, I have, the friends and the people in my circle have been so supportive in knowing that we all need to do what we need to do to best take care of ourselves, right?
Of course.
And I think that has been a huge lesson through this. Of, I know I have this huge circle of support. I have just an incredible circle.
Yeah.
Yet I also know that they are right over there when I'm ready, because I have needed to, I keep saying go inward. That's the word I keep reaching for, but I've needed to go inward to heal.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot by being outside, by being grounded, staying grounded, nature, mindfulness, which again, I think, all those years ago, I worked with a mindfulness coach, and more than ever right now, I have never set my practice on such fire as I have, as far as being mindful, meditation, yoga practice.
Yeah. Just like peeling back.
Peeling back, and, all things that bring reflection.
Yeah.
And what I have found is I can hear and connect with that entire beautiful realm that I'm now getting to know better and hear him and feel his energy when I'm in this space versus when I'm going 110 miles per hour.
Isn't that interesting?
And that's really important to me.
Right? Isn't that so interesting that that's what I just thought of. I think about that, and I think about why I feel so deeply connected to, for example, my grandmother, where I've had these very vivid experiences in, I guess, meditations, knowing that like she was truly sitting side by side with me in those moments. And it's like feeling so connected, and it's like not, and from that place brings so much joy and peace and love, and not even being able to dip into the sadness of the loss, because it doesn't feel like that. There still is this connectedness. And I think sometimes when we are on that overdrive and it's just doing the one thing and then we move to the next thing and then we go, of course we're feeling disconnected from ourselves, from each other. Like your family, you feel disconnected from your family, you feel disconnected from, the loss. That's what happens when we are in this overdrive of just go, 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 go,
Right.
not even
Yes.
coming to that pause and coming to that stillness. And I think I always just get fascinated of just, when I talk to people, and it's like, it's always the same thing. It looks different, but the nature and everything that is so available to us to bring us back home to ourselves is so easily accessible to us. And then we lean so much on, of course, and unfortunately, in this world of like social media and all of that, it's like we often lean to like, let me go find something else that's going to give me the answer. Let me go here. Let me go here. Let me go here. It's going to give me what I need right now. And it's like stillness.
And that's interesting to me because, and you've mentioned it a couple times, and I picked up on it because it's a term I use often. And that is, I feel like I am back home to who I was and who I was designed to be before the world starts coming at us, which again, it does, and that's what I feel is so interesting is we're designed to evolve with the world, right? That's why we're here. We're here to learn and to grow and to design bigger. And yet we can learn how to do it well by also nurturing, what we need on the other side of the busy and the hustle. And I often refer to the word surrender. And I felt that word come to me very early on with this because I've had 56 years of hard charging. The bigger the goal, the better, and then make it a little bit bigger after that. And that kind of stuff ignited me. I loved it. I was in my element. It wasn't ever anything I was doing out of dread, right? Mm-hmm. But I liked having that plan.
Yeah.
And all of the sudden, the bottom fell out. And, when I look at the number of things that have changed and I look at them, as just this incredible development, expansion again, but I keep going back to the word surrender. And I think maybe a year ago, I would have thought surrender meant you're waving a white flag and you're giving up, and you don't do that. And now I look at surrender as, it's the furthest thing from passive is action of taking the steps when you don't always know where they're leading you, trusting in what might be a plan that you can't see, yet you are being divinely guided. And it's okay not to know the 10 steps that are taking you someplace because you're just focusing on that first step that's right in front of you. So again, these are all things that I've been learning. I think I haven't been sitting staring at a blank wall during this period. This has all just been, I've been craving, understanding what I'm feeling and why, and where I'm finding the peace. And I'm finding the peace in saying, there's a bigger plan with this. And I'm trusting my God. And I'm going to listen and I'm going to slow down, because again, that's where I feel and hear, and just that's where the beauty has been, the comfort I've been able to find.
Yeah, I think that's the most beautiful way that I've heard someone talk about surrender. And yeah, it truly is such a beautiful way of looking at surrendering, of looking at it. And I think we sometimes are so resistant of surrendering because it feels like that. It feels like we're waving the white flag. It feels like we are like giving up, but it's the complete opposite.
It is probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, of course.
To be honest, because it means I'm not in control.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm trusting in something that is far different than what I thought was a really good plan. And it's, and it's doing so in a time of truly the darkest of times. Yet at the very same time, it's like, okay, use me, show me, I trust you. And that's where the peace comes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I can feel it when I jump in and maybe start getting going a little bit more than I'm ready for, so it's learning to listen to that internal compass of how much, and and kind of learning a little bit each time.
Yeah.
Because again, we're meant to live in this world and we're meant to evolve with it and grow with it and, just embrace everything that comes with this life. But I think there's that balance that I know I'm finding.
Mm.
And it comes, I think for me, it's been coming with just knowing how much I can take in,
Yeah.
the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes like the only way to know and the only way to like fully be able to support ourselves is to create that stillness, to create this connection back to yourself. Because if you're not listening, I've always kind of said, like, you're gonna be forced to like sit and listen,
Right.
and
Yeah. At
that's
some point.
right. Like people, that's people getting sick.
Yes.
It's like you haven't been
Yes.
listening. You're not listening to your body, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like coming back to that and just creating this. And then how do we create? It's like creating that where that's happening. That's a regular thing, and it's not a
Mm-hmm.
once in a while kind of thing, or a when something
Yes.
happens, then I start to listen. It's doing that
It's a
now.
practice. Yes.
Exactly. Making
It's
it
a
that
practice.
practice now, today, in every moment. And I feel like that, I think I'm having this aha moment too, even right now. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, I think in ways, like, especially the last 2 years, it feels like things have slowed down for me. And I feel like I resonate so much with you in the sense that I'm like
Mm-hmm.
the go, 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 do the next
Uh-huh.
thing, the next
Yep.
goal, bigger, better, like always dreaming big. Like, I'm like, how do I fill my calendar? Do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh,
been my
yes.
life for the last 10 years. And I know
Mm.
that in ways, becoming a mom is going to change that. And
Yes, it comes with it.
right, it's
Yes.
like, and that's been the
Yeah.
scary part for me, and the part that for me is going to be a big surrender of just and looking at it
Yeah.
as not something that I'm like giving up, and just like embracing this
No.
new way of being. And so it's just interesting
Right.
when we can notice how things are preparing us in ways, and also just have that full trust too of why
Yes.
things are the way they are, even if we don't fully
Well,
understand them.
exactly. And that, I think back over the course of life, and, I think pain is a great teacher.
Yep.
It's a great teacher. Uh, and we all are going to face something at some time in our life that's hard, that creates challenges, and so I don't know, each time with those, I think just refining a little bit and walking away with, okay, this is how it can look better, look different, this is how I can grow. I each mountain in my life, I think, thank goodness I had what we just came through, because this would be really hard to face if I didn't have the life lessons that came with cancer, if I didn't have the life lessons that came with a brain hemorrhage at birth, so just drawing upon whatever it is. And again, I would love to say I pray it's not a grief or it's not losing a loved one, or, but we can draw so much from our life experiences that can put us in a place to learn and, you know, be prepared for each stage of life that comes. And again, it all looks different, and everybody's walk through grief looks different. And there just is nothing textbook about this other than, I always say, love the people that that are walking through it. I have a shirt I got a long time ago, and on the back of it says, be kind to that person in line. You don't know what their
Mm,
story is. And I think the number of times somebody has shown me grace because, the things on my plate at that point were bigger than life. And that's what we can do for one another, is not judge
yeah.
and welcome and accept how people need to do it.
Amen. I mean, you said it a couple
Mm-hmm.
times about it. There's no textbook. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally what just jumped out, or what I heard, is that it's not supposed to be, because
No, yeah.
we all have to learn our way. And that's how we That's how we get to know ourselves too.
Yes.
It's yes, we can draw from each other, and that's powerful. As we draw in each other, we lean in each other, we lean in, in the collective, in our sisters, our brothers. Like, we can do
Right.
that. We can lean on that, and we can look to the inspiration, look to the guidance, but we have to find our own way through it. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
That's where any person who has walked a path, such as you walking the path that you have walked in this lifetime, all of us who have walked these paths, we've learned so much about ourselves in the
Yes.
challenge and in the pain. It's not supposed to be a
Yeah.
textbook. None of it's supposed to
No.
be like anyone
No.
else's. That's why it's so different.
Right. Right. And just, showing some self-compassion, right?
Yeah.
Because that is, and I had this aha moment pretty early on about, I felt like I kept saying old Vicky, and a beautiful friend and mentor of mine said, what if you looked at it differently, and maybe you just came to understand that you're just finding the Vicky you were always meant to be and designed to be and created to be before the world got at us,
Yeah.
because that's just what happens. That's just all part of this, right? But because I kept referencing, I feel like I'm
Mm.
home with myself again, who I'm meant to be, who God designed me to be. But I was just so busy trying to do all the other things, I'd kind of forgotten about her. And I loved when she said that to me, because I thought, yes, I think I'm finding her again.
Mm.
And it's because of quieting down and showing myself a little grace,
Of course.
because sometimes we don't. And, it's, I think that self-compassion can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the self-compassion goes, because too, it's like just understanding the aspect that we're doing this for the first time. We're walking this for the first time. And I think that's too where my brain always goes whenever I say that, is I always think about just how we can give that grace to and compassion to everybody else in our lives. And how,
Yes.
because then when we give ourselves that compassion and grace, I'm walking this path for the first time. I'm learning this for the first time. Well, guess what? Our parents are doing it the same, and our sisters
Uh-huh.
and our kids,
Yes.
they're also doing it for the first time. And so it's just that
Yeah.
compassion that we can give to ourselves and to each other brings, like, just more kindness into the world, more grace. Yeah,
More grace, no judgment.
all of it.
There is no easy way to do. That's what's crafting us,
Yeah,
right? It's what's
that's what's
making us who
crafting
we
it.
are. Yeah, I wish we could protect one another from it, but it's just, I think we are all here to love one another and to be kind and to serve.
Yeah,
Sometimes things get in the way.
they do.
We have to come back and find that purpose.
I'm so grateful. This was such a beautiful conversation, as I knew it was going to be.
Well, I'm just so, again, you were a gift that came in to me and for me, because I believe, again, there's reasoning for all of this. And I believe that God is leading me on a path of where I'm to go and who I can help and serve, take care of my heart at the same time, show
Mm-hmm.
other people it's okay to do the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all walking this path, and I love what you
Uh,
just said now too, of just, we're crafting our stories,
mhm,
we're crafting our journeys, one step
mhm,
at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a
mhm,
time. We're all doing that,
literally.
you know?
And then backsliding every once in a while.
I love it.
That's just what it is. But what a beautiful lesson we can be for our kids and other people who are, having to face the things. You don't want this on anybody. You would not wish any of this on anybody. And yet somehow we all still find challenges landing in our laps. So, pull one another up and be that
Exactly.
breath.
Exactly. And I feel like in
So
ways,
you were that for me. You really were. I saw that, and I was still fetal position at that point. But I thought, there's a plan with all of this. And
mhm,
he is as big as life with me saying, yeah, that's it, baby.
exactly.
So thank you.
I
So
mean,
thank
thank
you.
you too. Yeah, I just think about it's like passing on the torch, I guess, is like the visual that I have, in the sense that, or even extending the light, it's like when we lean into sharing our journeys and sharing our stories. And I think that's why I love the space that I've created and just like in this dynamic, because it
Yes.
offers that, right? It offers this opportunity for us to like light your torch,
Mm,
whoever it is that listens to it, that needed this, to hear this, to
yes.
be needed this in this moment of wherever they're at, lighting their torch. And then they're going to light somebody else's torch and bringing more light into the world, letting out
Yes.
the darkness and bringing more light into it. And that's the visual that I'm like seeing right now in this
Yes.
moment.
Well, and I've said, light always outshines the darkness. Right. And so and there have been plenty of times, and I'm sure you felt it also. We all have. It's just acknowledging I don't know if I can do one more day. But guess what? We do one more day, and we get a little stronger and we are reaching for those lights. So yeah, we'll just keep reaching and keep stepping.
And I just invite those that tune into this episode to just feel free to share whatever landed for you in this moment. So grateful for you, Vicky. You're such a light in this world. Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.